G'day, everyone, and welcome to Seven Questions, a podcast that shares the stories and compelling lessons founders, investors, and leaders shaping our economy. I'm your host, Wayne Gerard, founder and investor at Partner and co-founder of Create Financial. With Seven Questions, we explore the founder journey, idea to legacy, uncovering the insights, lessons, and defining moments that shaped each founder and the amazing business they built. Whether you're a first-time founder, serial entrepreneur, investor, or someone looking for insights on entrepreneurship, what it takes to build a world-class company, these conversations start to inspire you, get you thinking, and hopefully you'll find some timely wisdom that propels your journey. G'day, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Seven Questions. I have been looking forward to having this conversation with Roman for quite some time. Roman and I have worked together for over a decade. He joined me at RedEye as CFO and got the opportunity to move him and his family to North America to establish our North American operation for the second time in about 2017, 2018, Roman, something like that.
Yeah, 2017, 2018, we were there.
Yeah. What a great opportunity for an accountant to lead operations, revenue, customers, and product in North America. Roman then came back to Australia a couple of years into the journey as his family grew and took over responsibility for customer success and then ultimately back into the CFO role to help us grow RedEye globally. And I have had nothing but the best of experience working with Roman. So when we caught up and Roman was talking about what he was up to and I was talking about what I was doing, Roman said, "Hey, I'm going to create an accounting company specifically focused on founders." And I said, "Hey, I would love to help." Create Financial is Roman's baby. It is an amazing business built on the back of lived experience. So I'm excited to have a conversation about what Roman's doing with Create Financial and how it's helping founders and investors to really grow the best businesses here in Australia. Roman Galikov, welcome to Seven Questions.
Thanks, Wayne. What an intro. That's excellent. Thank you. Appreciate
it. Mate, before we kick off, let's help people get to know you. You know, you are more than just an accountant. You're one of the most commercial guys I've ever met and also a top bloke as well. So let's learn a little bit about your past, your background. What are the experiences and moments that have got you to this place and this time right now?
Thanks, Wayne. And you will have heard it all before, obviously, over the many years that we've worked together. I remember I was sharing actually this story with you in a car on the way to Sedona in the US, sort of how I kind of the story of me becoming the accountant and doing what I did. Because I never really planned to become an accountant, right? Like I grew up in Russia, and I feel like the goal number one for my parents was to make sure that I don't end up working or starting a family in Russia, right? So they worked really hard to help me leave. And I left for England initially and spent a few years there, did my first degree in mathematics, and then decided to come and live in Australia. And becoming an accountant was, a bit of a strategic move. The skilled migration visa was the easiest path to permanent residency, and accountants were scoring top points in that process. So my sister and I just looked at each other and thought, how hard can it be to become accountants? Let's do that and get permanent residency in Australia. That was
an accountant with hustle from day one.
Right? Exactly right. So that was 2007. And one thing led to another. Accounting was a better job than most. And so I ended up being offered a role straight out of university and then was offered another role. So it just kind of happened by accident, but it's really with RedEye where I got to do things other than finance and accounting and kind of realized my true passions for entrepreneurship and supporting founders and ultimately doing what we do now.
Which is perfect. So through Seven Questions, we help the audience get to know you and understand the problem you're solving, the business you're building, some of the lessons you've learned along the way. And really, I want people to think about how do they get involved. And so let's start with question number one, which is tell us a bit about the problem you're solving and how are you solving it that makes Create Financial unique?
So Create Financial offers tax, R&D tax incentive, CFO, and commercial advisory services for founders and their businesses. Where we're different is that we're effectively a one-stop shop for founders looking for holistic financial services and advisory support. So they don't need to juggle a number of advisors and consultants. Instead, they can partner with Create Financial and have the compliance side of things handled, those essentials, but also benefit from advice based on real experience.
So let's just dig into the real experience thing. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you gained at RedEye that are now really relevant and prevalent in the way that you advise and support founders on their journey?
Some of the things we've worked through and always try to find appropriate advice on was things like setting up an ESOP plan, right? We've worked through that and it was a fairly, I guess, complex exercise that needed to be thoughtful and considerate. Things like raising capital, things like building models that not only, I guess, show the up and to the right trajectory that everybody is looking for, but actually tell the story of how we will get there and how we did get there in the end. It's things like setting up structures that span more than just Australia and actually covered sort of regions in other countries, New Zealand and the US, and then later in our other roles, Europe as well. So it's everything that a startup deals with on its journey from being an early stage company to being a globally relevant company that is venture funded and is ultimately looking to satisfy both the thesis that founders have as well as the thesis that investors have.
I think about the experience you brought as CFO to the business and really across every stage of the business's life cycle and all the functional areas, you played a critical role. So whether it was go to market or pricing or terms and conditions or ESOPs, capital raisings, business models and business plans, strategy sessions to the board, you really had a hand in all of those elements of the business, and being able to bring that lived experience back to founders today is invaluable. What are some of the challenges that you see in the market at the moment that customers of Create Financial are facing?
That's a good question, right? And there's not one answer to it. One is kind of understanding that maybe venture capital is not always the most appropriate source of funding, and not focusing on their customers and not focusing on accessing grants and other government incentives. That's a challenge that it affects their entire startup, right? Because where the founder is focused determines where the company spends its time and where it kind of succeeds. The founder spends a lot of time on a futile exercise that is really time consuming and doesn't go anywhere. That's time wasted, and that can be catastrophic. So funding is always a conversation that we have. And as companies start to grow, the first few hires that they make are always critical. So conversations around ESOPs and remuneration plans are always happening as well.
I think specifically about funding, and you and I talk a lot about the four sources of funding and the order and priority that you should think about them. Do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. It's the four that we always talk about is number one is your customer, right? Your customer is the best source of funding, revenue, and that signals confidence to your staff, signal confidence to your future investors. It ultimately gives oxygen to your business. a business without revenues is not a business, and revenue comes from customers. You have to find your customers, right? And it's sometimes we're sort of having conversations with early stage founders that don't feel necessarily ready to charge for their products, or sort of feel like their products are not quite as valuable as they kind of want them to be. It's all those things need to be worked through, but ultimately you need to find a way to add value to your customer in a way that deserves you getting paid and earns you revenue. So that's number one. Number two is things like R&D tax incentive and government grants. A lot of them are not competitive, available to everyone who fits the guidelines of the program. And it really is a lot of the time an admin exercise that needs to be done well and on time in order for the company to secure either the tax incentive or the funding. R&D tax incentive is a fantastic way to accelerate your development and bring cash flow back into the business. So we help all of our clients getting R&D tax incentive support. Third is, and that often surprises people, is debt, right? Debt can be very, very useful, and it's not right for everybody. However, when your business is in a position where it is able to service a debt facility and can get sufficient return on investment from that facility, it starts making sense, right? The question we often get is, this early in their journey, many founders don't feel like there's a debt product available, which is not always right. There are a couple of options that are available, right? One is the R&D lending. That there are a number of players in the market, and we recommend some specific players. The other is venture debt. For companies that are a little bit further along in their journey, venture debt can become a really interesting proposition that kind of, in some instances can be a hybrid of a normal debt product and an R&D loan and a warrant. A little bit complex, but can be appropriate. And only after those three options have been considered do we say to consider equity funding, right? That's, that is in a way selling the farm. Doing it too early at a valuation that's too low may not give you the oxygen that you truly need to scale the business, but will take the equity away from you, and therefore sort of control and incentive may disappear with it. So equity funding is kind of, I always refer to it as last but not least, right? It can be a real signal to the market if you raise venture capital from somebody with a brand and a reputation. It can be a signal of confidence, and it's a valuation, I guess, more than anything, right? So kind of to be valued at a certain level often helps. It helps win customers. It helps win staff. It's great, right? And ultimately it's an investment. However, long term, it's probably the one that will cost you most.
Mate, 4 sources of capital: customers are your best source of capital. Grants and R&D, tax incentive, funding is your second best source of capital. The third best source is debt when it's appropriate. And obviously the fourth source is a capital investment, an equity investment through venture capital or an angel group or someone like that. One of the things that I really love about grants and the R&D tax incentive is not just the fact that the capital is non-dilutive, it's actually the exercise that you have to go through in order to get that capital. I think often people see it as an admin burden. I actually see it as a chance to stop and to get very, very clear on the business, the strategy, and to make sure your documentation reflects what you're really doing. So that exercise of getting your business match fit to take capital is something that I think founders should always be focused on. You and I were in a workshop the other day with an early stage company, and one of the things you were espousing was always having a data room ready and always having good quality documentation accessible to the people who need to have it. That's just good discipline. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just having your house in order, right?
Yeah.
And things like, don't have tax returns and buses that are overdue. Be on time and have that tidied up, but also be able and have it available, readily available, just in case, right? When we're talking about have a data room, it doesn't necessarily mean have an expensive subscription to a product that has bells and whistles. A lot of the time is just having a Google Drive or an iCloud folder that has your tax, commercial, and employment documentation in one place available in case it needs to be looked at by either an investor or an advisor even, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time it becomes a good discipline for the founder to have a well-organized admin side of things that can ultimately speed up a transaction in the future.
Yeah, I think it's just good discipline for running a business, right? Like whether it's to win a major contract or to raise capital, being able to put your hands on your insurance, being able to put your hands on your financials, and being able to, if you're an early stage company servicing an enterprise customer, they want access to some of that data depending upon the scope and size of the contract that you're going for. So having your house in order makes a lot of sense. Mate, let's talk about how you're offering services that create financial. What is your unique insight or secret sauce? What's the approach you're taking that really is adding a lot of value to your customers?
I think, and we kind of touched on it before, right? The kind of been there, done that helps a lot, right? And we see it it's the same for second time, third time founders, right? They just move it at a different speed. And so do we, right? We just move at a different speed because we've been there, done that, right? We don't need to pause and think because we just kind of know what happens next and it's faster to get there. So being able to advise based on experience is really helpful. I think what's unique about us is not only have we been there, done that, but we're also qualified to advise and act on behalf of clients. So things like R&D tax incentive and tax become not only easier, right? They're easier to understand, but they're also done faster.
Yeah, having the compliance in place, being certified with ASIC and the ATO to be able to offer those services just makes things sensible, right? And you talked about it a bit before. Being able to streamline the number of advisors you use as a startup means you don't have to explain yourself 3-4 times. You don't have to constantly update different advisors on where you're at. It's easier to partner with someone that can take that knowledge and apply it across accounting, across tax, across R&D, across structuring, and into the commercial domain, help with contracts, help with pricing models, help with go-to-market, help with employment contracts, help with ESOP. That's a pretty powerful strategy. Mate, been around the block. You've had a lot of experience over the last kind of 15 years working at RedEye as a founder of your own tech company and as a founder now running an accounting and tax and commercial advisory practice specifically for founders and investors. What's one bit of advice that founders are always asking from you that you could share with them right now?
It differs depending on the stage of growth, right? Early stages, everybody wants to make sure that their structure is right from the get-go. And that's a really great question to ask and is a really important part to get right is kind of structuring, making sure you've got the right entities and the right ownerships in the business. Later on, it's often around how do we make sure that our team is not just on the journey, but truly incentivized to go all the way. So we have conversations around ESOPs and incentive plans.
Mate, a lot of companies are doing R&D and they do qualify for the R&D tax incentive. What's the experience that you've had working with early founders on getting set up to record the data necessary to apply for the R&D tax incentive?
That's a good question. And now that we have AI, making sure that you have appropriate evidence for R&D tax incentive has never been easier. Things like recording meetings, storing transcripts, identifying core activities and supporting activities based on what actually has happened in the business has never been easier. The kind of where some founders struggle is some founders have a really good discipline of recording their meetings and creating evidence, and that creates a huge body of evidence that many consultants don't have the ability to analyze, right? Because it just becomes too much. So they kind of shy away from it and say, don't worry about it, and it's for you to keep, and kind of we don't really want to see it. Let us talk to you, right? Let us talk to you and kind of tease these things out where it really defeats the purpose, right? So you again end up with an R&D tax incentive that's based on your story rather than your evidence, and that's a risk. I think the better approach is, again, to record and create the evidence as you go, contemporaneous evidence that fits the requirements of the programs, but then also make sure that your consultant has the ability to analyze this huge body of evidence and prepare your application based on your evidence, not based on your story. There are two key benefits of that. One is the strength of your application is far better because it's based on real evidence. And in case of a review of a query, you can go straight back to the evidence and produce it. The other is the time that's required from the founder and their technical team. If you have a consultant who's able to analyze a large volume of data without taking your team away from what they do every day for a long period of time, ultimately saves you not only professional fees, but actually keeps your team focused on what they need to do for the business.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So you're a founder in your own right. You're building Create Financial as a company right now. What's one, I guess, piece of advice or lesson that you've learned over a long journey that you wish you knew at the start?
I think sort of with Create Financial specifically, we spoke about why founders choose us, right? It's the fact that they don't need to deal with a tax agent who doesn't really understand what they do and is not able to advise. It's the fact that they don't have to have a separate consultant or a separate firm looking after their R&D advisory. It's the fact that they can access, the based on experience advice with us. However, one thing that I've learned that it truly is the speed of execution is what's valued most, right? And what founders appreciate from us and their customers appreciate from them, right? Founders just want things done, and they want them done well and quickly.
Makes a lot of sense, right? Like when I think about the market dynamics, whether you're here or in the US or in Europe or anywhere, markets work at certain speeds, and being able to operate at that speed and having advisors that can help you operate at that speed is really critical if you want to build a great brand and great reputation and win in that market. So having a partner that can operate at the speed you need to move is a great, and they're a great addition to the team. I think back to RedEye and, some of the partners we had, and in particular, we had a lawyer who was exceptional at operating at the speed we needed to operate. And, finding great people to partner with like that is just fantastic. Let's move on to question number 4, which is, what's been a pivotal moment or breakthrough that has changed your trajectory here at Create Financial?
I think the main pivotal moment or breakthrough for us was starting a firm in 2025 without having a stack of legacy applications and building our own set of workflows and tech from scratch has been hugely valuable, right? AI has enabled many parts of financial services to be delivered in a way that is far quicker, far cheaper, and to be able to pass that on to our customers has been, it's a competitive advantage that is hugely valuable.
You've founded not just Create Financial, you've also founded a tech company that's focused in the financial services space. You've obviously learnt a bunch of lessons, both as a founder yourself, but also as the CFO helping to drive RedEye, and also as the GM of North America for RedEye. What's been one of those really, when you look back, one of those hard decisions that you've had to make, one of those hard lessons you've learned or faced as a founder? Share one of those with us, and what's the takeaway, and how does that influence you to operate today?
That's a really good question, and we've touched on it as well. The speed of execution, getting things done fast, and I think one thing that's always held me back is hesitating. Right, so thinking about something and maybe overthinking certain moves, and kind of hesitating and not making the call. I feel like I'm conscious about it now, that whenever I find myself sort of spinning wheels or hesitating, you just got to make the call and kind of and proceed. The hardest thing with my startup was I didn't focus on the right things at the right time, and it kind of ultimately pivoted to something else. But at the same time, allowed my infrastructure to linger, allowed a couple of customers to linger in the system. And it sort of became a distraction, and it became a cost. And again, that hesitation, not making the call, I think has been a lesson learned. If things work, lean into it. If things don't work, make the call and change.
Yeah, you can't always get the call perfect, can you?
Exactly. You never get the call perfect. And similar to trying to time the market, right? You just can never do it. That 80-20 rule, where 20% of efforts it generates 80% of value, is really important.
Mate, I love it. I spent 10 years in the army, as you know, and one of the, I guess, lessons that I remember from that was a drill sergeant saying to me, "Hey, Wayne, you've got two choices, right? You can ready, aim, fire, or you can ready, fire, aim. And the scenario dictates which way you should go, but you've got to be comfortable operating in both models. So ready, aim, fire, ready, then aim, get your ducks in a row and then go do it. Or ready, fire, aim, work out where you want to go, get going, and then adjust along the course, because not all the information is available to you when you need to start." And I think that is the founder journey. It's very rare that all the information is available when you need to start. The fact is, just start and then go get the information and make the best quality decision you can and adjust course along the way. Because if you're not going, someone else is, and you're missing the opportunity, and someone else has the potential to win the market share you could have won, to secure that customer, to recruit that person, to raise that capital. And all of those missed opportunities, make the difference between being a globally relevant company and a company that A, never got off the ground, or a company that didn't reach its full potential.
And it's especially true in the innovation ecosystem, right? You just don't know, because you're building something that hasn't been done before. The only way to get there is to try, and the only way to good is to start with something bad and improve it, right? It's kind of it's impossible to start with something great.
Yeah. So you're a dad, you're a husband, you're building a business, you're also running Founders Collective on the side with Gav. We'll talk a bit about that in a moment as well. So you've got a bunch of things going on in your world. How do you maintain your energy? How do you maintain that mindset and find time to devote to all the different aspects of your life?
I remember at RedEye, we did a training session for our sales team, right? And again, somehow I ended up in the room for that couple of days. And the guy who ran the session kind of touched on the neuroscience and touched on sort of, how people feel during certain situations and how feelings effectively, like, I guess what that sales team did. But one thing I took away was it's kind of our heads are chemical factories, right? And they kind of produce these various chemicals that make us feel sleepy, hungry, happy, kind of all these different things, right? And kind of all these things are triggered by certain chemicals. And while a lot of it is out of our control, a lot of it is within our control, right? And you can sort of get your factory better at producing certain things and better at processing certain things. And things like you have to sleep, you have to eat well, you have to exercise, you have to have a laugh, you have to spend time with your family, you have to give your kids hugs. It's not just kind of like, oh, it's nice. No, you have to, right? You actually have to, and making time for it, right? So I feel like the last for many years now, I've made time for those things, and it's kind of bedtime is early. And when you have kids, it's easier to have early bedtime when they sleep, right? That's maybe some parents will hate me for saying that, but when kids eventually sleep, kind of going to bed early is easy. Making time for exercise, making it part of your routine again becomes easy if you just make time for it. And food and spending time with your friends and family is again, like, you just got to make time for these things in order to help yourself feel better and experience things in a happier way.
Yeah, I love the happiness part there, because if I was to describe you to someone, I would say that you are one of the most affable and happy people, genuinely optimistic and positive people. And you're always infectious with that way you approach people. So do you think about that consciously? Is that something you try to do, or is that just who you are? Or how do you constantly turn up and be a positive energy in a room?
There's something you say that is, I don't know, had an impact on me as well. Things aren't good, they're not bad, they just are, right? It's kind of this. So there's no point kind of being concerned by default.
Yeah.
Right. So my default is not being concerned until there's a real reason that I can process and understand. So I think that's, I'm probably just lucky that I can approach things in that way. Yeah. And I don't know. No, I don't think about it. It's a blessing and a curse.
You know, when I think about the positive energy that other people get by, that rubs off from you, right? How, do you ever have a down day?
I do, but maybe I'd sort of keep it to myself. I had a down day last week when, a piece of software that I was very happy to use and configured in a way that just, was so sleek and I was so excited about it, was failed because of a miscommunication, and it, I was fuming about it, right? It's really it's affected me more than I proud to admit. But again, kind of after giving it a few hours and kind of processing that it's slowed me down for a little bit. Ultimately, nothing's changed.
How do you get yourself out of a bad day, Roman?
How do I get myself? I think you just got to give it a bit of time, right? It's kind of this chemical factory. Like it's, if these chemicals have been released, have been produced, have been released, your body needs time to kind of process them. And a bit of activity helps. Taking your mind off it by doing something else helps. Having a sleep helps. Ultimately, you do need to give it a little bit of time, right? Similar to how you've got to make time for exercise and sleep and kind of all those things that make you feel good. If you are affected by something in a way that's kind of threw you out of balance, you just got to give it a little bit of time to balance it back in.
Yeah, I love it. Mate, what's on the agenda for Create Financial for the rest of 2026? What are your milestones? What are you aiming to do? And how can people get involved and either as customers or supporters of as partners, supporters of your journey?
So Create Financial this year will continue supporting founders with everything from accounting, tax, R&D tax incentive, CFO services, and commercial advisory. I think it's important to for us to own that market and be the leaders in that market. Will grow without a doubt. I think one of the challenges we'll work through is how do we grow our team with people who, again, have real experience in our vertical and can build those relationships with our clients. The best way to get in touch is message me directly on LinkedIn. Otherwise, head to the website createfinancial.com.au and find a phone number or reach out through the contact us form.
When's the right time for an early stage founder to think about a partner like Create Financial?
I think as soon as you think that this could be something, reach out, right? That's probably a good place to start thinking about how do you structure it and how do you set yourself up to win your customers and be easy to deal with. So there's no, I think the earlier the better, right? Is probably the short answer is the earlier the better.
If a founder's working with an existing accountant and that accountant doesn't really have any startup specific advice, what advice would you give to the founder?
Reach out and have a conversation. Switching accountants is not an intensive exercise. It's really, really quite straightforward. A lot of the time your records are electronic and the authorizations and nominations are electronic. So there really is no significant burden in switching your tax agents. So it's important to surround yourself with advisors that you can trust. And ultimately, if you feel like you're not getting the right advice from who you have now, consider switching and have a chat.
Yeah, fair call. Like I think about some of the telltales, right? Like if your accountant, your existing accountant can't help you with an ESOP or a capital raise or R&D tax incentive or ESIC compliance, they're good indicators that you probably want to go talk to someone that is an expert in, supporting early stage companies. So definitely worth having a chat to Roman if you're a founder and you're looking for that kind of support. Mate, we've covered the 7 questions that I wanted to cover to help people get to know you and understand what you're doing at Create Financial. Let's finish with a set of rapid fire questions. So, are you ready?
Good. Yep.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Beaches or mountains?
Beaches.
Books or podcasts?
Podcasts.
What's your favorite podcast right now?
How I Build This with Guy Raz has been my favorite podcast for the last 5 years.
Fantastic. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Do you prefer to work at home or in the office?
Home.
Why?
It's nice to be able to collect the kids from school. It's nice to not spend a lot of time in the car commuting to an office. When we see clients, we have an office. Makes sense to work from an office on those days. Otherwise, it makes sense to work from home.
Fantastic. Gym or cardio?
Both.
I thought you'd say that. So what is your poison at the moment? What's it called?
My form of exercise?
Yeah.
Fit Stop. Again,
Fit Stop.
Been that for many years. It's just, you just show up and you in and out within the hour. You don't have to think about what to do. You just show up, get it done, and that's it.
Yeah, fantastic. And who's a founder or investor you would love to hear from on 7 questions?
I would love to hear from. Have you heard Gav?
No, not yet.
Yeah, Gav and Ty from 6 sides.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Mate, that's fantastic. Roman, thank you for joining us on 7 Questions. It's been my absolute privilege and honor to work with you at RedEye and to watch what you're doing now and to help with Create Financial. It is great to see you thriving in the innovation ecosystem. I think the knowledge and the understanding and the practical skills you have is really relevant for founders. And I encourage any founder out there, if you're looking for a partner in the accounting, tax, and commercial advisory space, reach out to Roman at Create Financial. I'm not just saying that because I know him. I'm saying that because I know he does amazing work for founders. So thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you, Wayne. Really appreciate it.
Talk soon.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of 7 Questions. If you'd like to learn more about the founders, you can get a link to the full show notes in the description below. Have a great day. We look forward to you joining us on the next episode.